Upheaval, a violent, sudden change or disruption to something. What does it mean to live in a world of upheaval? Across many countries, cultures, and political worlds, there are many chaotic circumstances. Each collective group and every individual has their own definition of what their world of upheaval is. Throughout history, there have been many worlds of havoc and violence that have caused upheaval across the globe, which have affected the way society thinks and acts towards others. In the novel Do Not Say We Have Nothing, Madeleine Thien explores the world of upheaval under Chairman Mao and how his ideals of communism shook China and created a positive and negative revolution. For my related text, I have chosen Shahidul Alam's photography of Bangladesh in their world of political upheaval to show the oppression people go through under corrupt governments. The main question I focused on when I was creating my representation was, how are the characters' notions of identity affected by their world of upheaval? This question to me meant that I could explore people's personal experiences in a world of upheaval. I find people's different experiences highly interesting and I'm always ready to learn more about other cultures and experiences. In Do Not Say We Have Nothing, I was intrigued by the character Zuli and felt a connection to her as she is also a young female like myself. Her story was one of love, passion, and perseverance, but also of neglect and sorrow. She's a very determined character who refuses to give up her music until she's forced to when the Red Guards abuse her. I decided to write a poem so that I could condense her thoughts and feelings throughout the book into an understandable but powerful message. I focused mostly on the scene of Zuli's attack because it shows her last effort to keep her music before her death. One aspect of the poem that I chose to do was use and modify lines from the book. I wanted to capture the beautiful language of the novel, which perfectly describes Zuli's feelings. For example, swaggering angry red came from the line, "The Red Guards swaggered." A snake with 1,000 eyes is straight from the novel. What hideous flaw have I comes from what hideous flaw had they seen in her? And words like disassociated and numbness come from longer lines. The last paragraph is also a very important modification of the whole section of Zuli's suicide and captures her feelings in her last moments. The process of choosing the photographs for this poem was interesting. I found Shahidul Alam through a news article about his story of oppression from his government for his supposed propaganda photographs. He's a photographic journalist and human rights activist that captured moments of upheaval in Bangladesh. He was imprisoned in 2010 for capturing the killings in Bangladesh's Rapid Action Battalion after many years of activism. The world was outraged about this, but Shahidul still faces up to 14 years in prison for publishing propaganda against the government. I chose this photography because of the way he captures human experience and how the individual acts with others and their government. He captures many aspects of people's sorrow, terror, hardship, and determination, which matches Zuli's experience well. My poem looks at Zuli's journey and how she went from a determined musician to losing everything she fought for and eventually turning to suicide. I titled my poem Quiet for two reasons. The first is that in Zuli's world of upheaval, as well as Shahidul's, the people of the nation are silenced by their government. They do not have the freedom to speak their minds and are suffering in silence in their world. The second reason is that Zuli, when she is about to commit suicide, comments on how quiet the room is and considers if she should speak in that moment. This shows how lonely her world is and how she felt that this quiet was the only escape for her. When writing this poem, I wanted to explore the rhythm of the lines and how they fit together. A lot of the lines are lists of adjectives, and I use a lot of commas to make these lists flow through the stanzas. The first two sections of the representation are about Zuli's childhood and how she came to realise that her world was one of upheaval. The first image and section shows how Zuli is born into a caring world, where her mother's world tells her that she is free when she has her music. I chose this image because to me it shows that parents always care for their children because they are so precious. Shahidul's love for people also shows in this photo, and we can see how important human rights are to him. The second section is about when Zuli discovers the underground living room and how her family is punished for keeping the items within it. The writing discusses how people can find freedom, and yet when there is a corrupt government, secrets are always uncovered and aspirations are destroyed. This image shows a young girl who has been affected by the upheaval in Bangladesh. Although Zuli has a good home, she was mentally traumatized by the event, and it affected who she was as a person. It made her scared, but also more determined to continue with her music. The next two sections are when Zuli is a teenager, and how she is affected positively by her music, but also how the upheaval in China began to worsen for her personally. I wrote about how she feels alive with her music, but how Sparrow, described here as the bird, is so passive and never speaks up about any pain he might be holding. The red discussed here is about the Red Guards and the anger they hold within them. This is from the scene of the attack on Zuli and how all around her she just sees red. The red of the Red Guards, but also the anger of them and the terror the people felt. This image shows a protester in Bangladesh, and I thought that Zuli may have felt free when she was a musician and protested out against the government. But she is also caught up in the crowd that the Red Guards attacked, and so this is also shown through this image. The second section is about the actual attacks on the people. This is one of my favourite images of the representation because it captures how people are oppressed by their governments, but how they try to fight against it. It also shows an attack on the street, just like in Zuli's case. The poem shows how Zuli begins to feel that this is somehow her fault for trying to keep her music alive. She feels disassociated, like this isn't real, and how the government is like a snake, snatching up people everywhere they go. The last two sections are about Zuli's decline in mental health and how she feels completely broken. Once her violin is broken, she feels like her spirit is broken. This symbolism shows the spiritual connection between Zuli and her music. Art is so fragile, and so is Zuli. She feels numb and like her purity has been taken away. The image for this first section shows a woman behind a curtain. She is actually voting, which was a big step for Bangladesh in their politics. However, for my poem, I wanted to show that Zuli is in shadow, pushed behind the curtain and hidden from the world. The last section is the heaviest. I describe Zuli's suicide and how she feels like she is the one in the wrong, that she is so flawed that she must be the darkness. She feels so empty because she has lost her music, and so she enters the quiet. This image shows another human rights activist from Bangladesh, Kapana Chakma. It is a beautiful image and shows her deep in thought. Because the image is so dark and in a small room, I wanted to pair it with this section because to me, the image itself says quiet. I started the poem and ended the poem with the word quiet to reinforce the idea that people are silenced by their governments, even if they are born into and die in peace. In conclusion, my representation explores how worlds of upheaval can affect individuals' notions of identity. Zuli is so determined to keep her music because it is a part of her, but when that is finally taken away from her, her whole identity is no longer. She can't find any way to turn, and so she doesn't search for her identity again, but instead commits suicide because she feels that is the only way to go. The worlds of upheaval in Do Not Say We Have Nothing and Shahidul Alarm's photography are created by corrupt governments and people in power who don't treat people the way they should. Both the novel and the photography show how individuals are personally affected by chaos and violence, and how this turns into collective turmoil.